One of the most fascinating of mid-20th century Australian underworld figures was a man named Joseph Harold Ryan. In comparison to others, he is a mysterious figure. Nevertheless, enough became public to reveal that he was either a very maligned, innocent man or an extremely cunning criminal mastermind. This is the first part of a trilogy of the life and times of Joe Ryan. The Grey Shadow was an alias adopted by a number of Australian criminals in the interwar years, including Charles Clarence Jones, Owen Evans, who was deported to England in 1931, and Thomas Herbert Skinner, who may have been the original. The Grey Shadow referred to a criminal wearing a grey suit, who held up his victims at gunpoint and relieved them of their cash or other valuables. An editorial in the Cootamundra Herald of the 5th of August 1929 protested against other newspapers glamorising sneak thieves. Shortly before, the Lone Wolf and the Midnight Hare had both been taken into custody. Smith's Weekly on the 17th of August satirised the naming of criminals by creating a roll call of imaginary miscreants, such as the Purple Peril, Deadly Dracula, the Silent Frog, and the Spotted Tarantula. The Grey Shadow was a name commonly associated with Joseph Harold Ryan. Whether he was the first or not, it suited Ryan aptly, for he was a very private man, about whom little is known. He was born on the 9th of March 1900 in Paddington, Sydney, to Andrew and Lucy Ryan. He had blue eyes and brown hair, and stood 5'10". It's uncertain when he died. A suggestion that he passed away in 1952 is probably an error, conflating him with a separate individual named Harold Joseph Ryan, a farmer who died that year. Ryan had a sister named Mary, who was 1 year older than him. He enlisted in the army in May 1918, but his mother refused permission for him to serve, as he was her only son, he being under 21 years of age. A photo from 1922 shows that he had already been arrested by this time, but there is scant evidence of his activities to show what he was doing, legal or illegal. In 1918 he was working as a letterpress reader. He first made headlines in 1929. There had been a spate of daring armed robberies that winter in Sydney. Reed and Stevens' Annandale Bakery was robbed on the 22nd of July of that year. Bernard Baragry, the foreman baker, was leaving at dusk when a man armed with a rifle stepped forwards and said, "Put up your hands, turn round, now walk to the office." In the office he was made to stand facing the wall with his hands raised. When another employee, the clerk and bookkeeper Raymond Natley, entered the room, he too was made to stand, arms raised, face to the wall. Meanwhile, the robber helped himself to £28 cash and £77 in cheques. As he departed, he made the comment, "I'm the man who was here 2 years ago." There had been a similar hold-up in 1927 in the previous building on the site, which had burned down in 1928, but whether it was the same man or not is open to question. An attempt was made on the 29th of July to hold up William Dyprose's shop in Riley Street, Surrey Hills, by 2 masked men. Dyprose grabbed a bottle to wield as a weapon, and the duo retreated. During the afternoon of the 31st of July, a curious incident occurred in Bernard Feinberg's pawn shop. A man apparently attempted to steal an overcoat, and when asked to replace it, drew a revolver on Feinberg and said, "Stand back or I'll shoot you," before dropping the coat and fleeing. On the night of the 31st of July, at Harry Walter's new White Bay service station in Western Street, Rozelle, the manager, Henry Rennie Wheel, who was Walter's father-in-law, was engaged in conversation with 2 young assistants, Morgan Hall and Robert Richards, in a small office, when a figure suddenly appeared about 7 p.m. It was a heavily built man standing about 5'7" in a grey suit, with a white handkerchief obscuring the bottom half of his face. A grey felt slouch hat pulled down tightly shielded his eyes. He wore red rubber gloves, and in one hand held a revolver with a 12-inch barrel, which was held steadily on the surprised men. Sources vary on the exact words, but it was something along the lines of, "Hands up or I shoot." He ordered, "Come on, quick, hands above your heads and into that corner, faces to the wall." He spoke quickly and in a deep voice. Richards thought it was a joke and told the intruder, "Cut out the Wild West stuff," while Hall snapped, "Go to the devil." The man was not joking. "Quick, now into that corner, or by hell I'll drill you. I'll shoot." The men saw his finger tremble on the trigger and complied. While they stood facing the wall, they heard the cash register being operated. The masked man snatched up £22 in notes from the drawer, equivalent to almost $2,000 in 2021, and stuffed them into his pocket. It was then that a motorist pulled up to the garage. Seemingly unruffled, the thief then said, "Good night, gentlemen," and left. Henry Wheel decided to give chase, whereupon the robber turned and levelled his revolver and fired off a shot, striking the glass door 4 feet from him. The robber ran up a steep street called Hornsey, and not cowed by the bullet fired at him, Wheel continued the pursuit. The bandit turned and fired again, saying, "Take that." The bullet struck the road near the pursuer, yet even then the valiant Wheel just crouched low and continued his pursuit. Near the corner of Hornsey and Gordon Streets, he attempted to trip the thief, and then to jump onto his back. The fugitive turned and landed a heavy punch on the side of Wheel's head, knocking him down. He put a hand into his pocket as if contemplating shooting the other man where he lay, but then abruptly turned and ran to a car a few yards down the street. The car's engine was running and a door was open, but its lights were not on, and there were no number plates. Leaping in, the man was driven off into the darkness. The service station was robbed in a similar manner again in 1937. The building was eventually demolished around 2010 during urban renewal of the area. Although the man in the pawn shop in the afternoon differed from the service station bandit, it was believed connected. Police also immediately connected this crime with the robbery at the Annandale bakery a week before. James Lelliot, who operated a fruitery shop in Jersey Road, Woollahra, was asked by a man who pointed at the shop window, "How much are the apples?" at 9:20 p.m. on the 17th of August. He was distracted by the question for a moment and turned back to find the man had donned a mask and a gun barrel a few inches from his face. "Shell out," said the gunman. He only got 5 shillings from the till, so ordered Lelliot to turn out his pockets, which netted another £12 to £15. The description of the robber might have fitted the man who robbed the service station. James Stewart, then 80, was robbed at Underwood Street, Paddington, on the 19th of August, 1929. 2 men walked into his home at 11:45 a.m, and one grabbed him by the throat, and the old man was felled by a blow to the head given with a spanner, and his pockets searched, with £6 stolen. The bandit missed £249 hidden under the floorboards. Then departed when a neighbour, Mrs. Grace Waldron, had heard Stewart scream and gone to see what was happening. She ran into the house as the men ran out. They fled through a chemist shop, one of them asking Laureline Miller for permission to pass through. The method of the man who robbed a wine saloon in Darling Street, Rozelle, at 7 p.m. on the 25th of August was identical to the service station robbery. The man, who was about 5'10", burst in suddenly from the back door, holding a long-barrelled revolver, and ordered the proprietor, who had been cleaning up, his wife, and another man named Joe Duggan, who was present, up against a wall with hands raised, and not to move or he would shoot them. The robber, who wore a white handkerchief over his lower face, was quite chatty, and apologised to Mr. Hunt, as he prodded him in the ribs with the gun. "I'm very sorry to have to do this, but I have to get money to keep my wife and family." He added that he was a timber worker, and that he had 4 children. At one point he mentioned that he didn't want to kill them, but he was itching to shoot someone, that he had killed more people than he had fingers and toes, and that he was the Grey Shadow, and stated, "You can tell the mug demons of Australia that not one of them is clever enough to catch me. Don't forget to deliver that message." He rifled the till, stuffing the money into his pockets, remarking, "This is a pretty bum shop, only £9 in the till," then told the other 2, "Turn out your pockets and quick." They did so, netting him more cash and a gold watch. When Hunt said he didn't have tram fare home, the robber tossed back 4 shillings on the counter, saying, "Well, I'll leave you that." Then he nodded and said calmly, "That will do. Good evening, gentlemen. You must not move. In 2 minutes I will be gone," before exiting the building the way he had entered, and climbed over a ladder at the back fence, disappearing into the darkness outside. In all, he got away with about £20. An arrest was made on the 26th of August at a Paddington garage for the assault and robbery of James Stewart and the armed robbery of the service station. Joe Ryan was described as a 29-year-old motor driver. He had his own sedan, which he drove for hire. 2 plainclothes police had seen Ryan in Oxford Street and thought he matched the description of the wanted man. Constable Bull said he found a grey suit which matched that worn by the robber, but when he returned to Ryan's home to gather it for evidence, it had vanished. Ryan said his father may have pawned it. Wheel picked out Ryan from a lineup as the man who had shot at him, identifying him by his attitude. In court, Wheel was asked what he meant by attitude, and he said that the man's deportment, the way he tilted his head, and by his voice. Stewart also picked out Ryan from his hospital bed, and Mrs. Waldron was certain, after she heard Ryan speak, that he was one of the men. Ryan's lawyer questioned Constable Bull, asking if he had threatened Mrs. Waldron with losing her job as a cleaner at the Paddington Police Station and Courthouse if she failed to identify Ryan. Bull denied this. In court, Mrs. Waldron was less certain Ryan was the man, and Laureline Miller said that neither of the men were in court. Ryan insisted he was with two friends that night and not robbing the service station. He went to a Darlinghurst cafe at about 6:30 p.m. with Sidney Franks and Lawrence Cohen, and then they went to the stadium until 7:45 p.m. Ryan was remanded in custody until the 10th of September, which gave him the perfect alibi for a series of 3 taxi robberies on the night of the 8th and 9th of September by someone calling himself the Black Shadow during the first and third robberies, and the Grey Shadow during the second. By the time the case came to court on the 16th of October, 2 other men had been arrested for Grey Shadow crimes, including Thomas Skinner for the wine saloon robbery. He had bragged he also held up the bakery and the service station. The case against Ryan was falling apart at the seams. Not unexpectedly, Ryan was acquitted, and sensationally, when he was, a young woman rushed up and kissed him as he left the dock. She then ran out into the passage and collapsed. A man in the public gallery dropped advertising leaflets in the form of summonses to dance classes, and a willy wagtail bird was heard hopping about the roof singing to complete a bizarre scene. It was later claimed by the newspapers that Ryan shot the young woman later, but after a lot of yellow press sensation, it was revealed that he had not been at the address where she had been shot. It was quite strange, as the woman, Juanita O'Farrell, refused to say how she had been shot, and was eventually disclosed she had not been shot at all. She had been high on cocaine. Ryan laughed about the event, inviting a reporter into the home he had shared with his mother at 1 Iris Street, Paddington, for 17 years, the following night. He said he did not know the girl who kissed him. He was shocked when he was kissed, but thought she might have been with some of his friends. In fact, Ryan never seemed to take much interest in women, although he married Alice Gray in 1923, who is never heard of again. Quite an interesting coincidence in her surname, though. Soon, however, a lot more would be heard of Joe Ryan.